Hello, dear friends. Before a spiritual storm, a deep silence is heard. Opinion piece, summer reset, system debacle, globalist games, times are changing. The devil is in details, like the Soviet collapse. Let's start. Asians expect a total collapse of the West by summer, according to Benjamin Fulford. When a bow hunter hunts an elephant, he shoots an arrow through its heart, but doesn't get close for at least 24 hours. This is because, even if it's mortally wounded, it can still kill you in 100 different ways before it dies. Asians are setting of a Western collapse, but they'll stay away until it happens. Events on the ground predict the collapse of the European Union, followed by the collapse of the US. The super-rich Chinese foresee a collapse of the US this summer. In quotes, they are buying physical gold and selling more treasury bonds through intermediaries, says a Chinese source based in Singapore. In a sign that he is aware of this, President Trump has tried to change foreign debt and government bonds held by foreigners for zero interest bearing 100 years treasury bills, but hasn't found any buyers. Fulford suggested that what's happening is a Western version of the collapse of the Soviet Union, mentioning that several regimes are falling in countries such as Germany, France, the UK and the US. As a sign of financial trouble, President Trump signed an executive order establishing a strategic reserve of Bitcoin. In other words, he's trying to use cryptocurrency backed by physical assets as a way to avoid bankruptcy. Many people compare what's happening in the West to the fall of the Soviet Union. In 1989, Gorbachev decided to reduce government spending. He abruptly suspended aid to Soviet allies and granted freedom to everyone. Simultaneously, East Germany tore down the Berlin Wall, while the Poles elected members of Solidarity. While the Poles elected members of Solidarity. Notes French journalist Thierry Mason. Finally, the atheist Soviet Union collapsed and was replaced by Christian Russia. Financial collapse refers to an extreme situation in which a country or region's financial system suffers massive dysfunction, characterized by the inability of financial institutions to meet their obligations, a widespread loss of confidence in the markets, and a disruption in the flow of credit. This phenomenon can manifest itself through bank failures, massive withdrawals of deposits, sharp drops in asset prices, and a severe contraction in economic activity. In Europe, while the world is distracted by Western political theater, a battle is being waged that could decide the fate of most of the world's population. Fulford adds that Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney wants to ally with Europe to build an anti-Trump coalition from the Davos Forum. The problem is that the anti-Trump coalition is collapsing, and the president has no intention of protecting it. In his latest outburst, he said, in quotes, "The European Union is very, very unpleasant. The European ruling class is struggling and increasingly isolated and in a rapidly changing world. The US is now the enemy of the West," opines the Financial Times. The idea of European security without the involvement of Russia and Belarus is a fantasy, believes Valentina Matviyenko, chairwoman of the Russian Federation Council. Announced 800 billion euros in arms, in weapons to support Ukraine. announced by the European Union. But Germany and France are grappling with significant budget deficits. They are cutting benefits and privileges for various segments of population, while unemployment is rising. Aware of its powerlessness, the European Union has sent many delegations to Turkey requesting its protection, but the Turks haven't forgotten that they were defrauded in their attempt to join the EU, and they don't want to confront the Russians and Americans to protect the EU. European maneuvers to court China are also failing. President Xi Jinping has refused to travel to Brussels for a summit. He appears to be siding with Trump and Putin. China's position through its Global Civilization initiative emphasizes that tolerance, coexistence, exchanges, and mutual learning among different civilizations play an irreplaceable role in advancing humanity's modernization process when the future of all countries is closely connected. Dystopias. Turmoil drives global markets, but the crisis could still stand, Goldman Sachs warns. Elon Musk denounces the existence of magic money computers in the government, which contribute to increased waste of resources and fraud. Globalist games. They play, we pay. War is above all about making money and expanding power. The elite treats it as a game because they risk nothing. The US government is considering recognizing Crimea as Russian territory to end the conflict in Ukraine. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the economy needs a detox. A reckoning will be unavoidable so the economy can cleanse itself of its sins. David Rogers Webb, author of The Great Taking, believes we could be heading for a meltdown due to a conspiracy to facilitate a massive seizure of assets by banks in the event of a financial crisis, which could trigger an economic depression more severe than that of 1929. European democracy kills anyone who has a different opinion, declared Slovak MEP Blaha. In quotes, they failed attempt to assassinate Prime Minister Fico because he sought dialogue with Russia and peaceful political options, he asserted. Financial red alert. EU governments could seize most private savings to fund a doomed war, Mike Adams says. Desperate bureaucrats could seize most private funds and use them to wage war against Russia. What would happen if the EU seized savings deposited in banks? Asks Antonella Werner. That would be a slap in the face that would wake even the last few sleepers. It has been recommended for years to withdraw money from banks. Other conflicts. Japanese sources claim that China is preparing an unpleasant surprise that would involve cutting all submarine cables connecting Taiwan to the rest of the world and then initiating a naval blockade of the island. A Chinese hardliner once boasted that they could take over India in a matter of months. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated that President Trump and his administration seek to separate Russia from China in the same way that former President Nixon separated China from the Soviet Union during the Cold War. However, the West would be in no position to negotiate with China while it is locked in a civil war pitting Trump and Russia against most other Western governments. The main source of contention is Ukraine. The US has begun evacuating high-ranking officials, including generals and ministers, from the border area with Ukraine. This move prompted Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk to say that Poland will seek access to nuclear weapons under a French nuclear protection initiative, the famous Umbrella French. According to Gay Stellar, Europe's rearmament plan would be a suicide pact designed to plunge the continent into an irreversible economic and geopolitical crisis. NATO is disintegrating, Washington is disengaging, and Russia is watching the process knowing it has won the war. For his part, Trump plans to withdraw 35,000 troops from Germany and deploy them to Hungary. This decision comes as Hungarian leader Viktor Orbán claims that globalists are seeking to destabilize Serbia, Slovakia and Hungary after Washington's defeat. This is setting the stage for positive political change in Germany and France. With the cut in military support to Ukraine, many European governments are feeling remorse for decades of US arms purchases or weapons purchases that have left them dependent on Washington. The fact is that the US is keeping secret the so-called kill switches that would immobilize most European aircraft and weapon systems. Although the US funds 70% of NATO, its own allies are against it. While President Trump is trying to steer them away from war with Russia, Elon Musk caused quite a stir on his social media platform X. In response to a post that read, "It's time to leave NATO and the UN," Musk replied, "I agree," in quotes. Panama. Billionaire Larry Fink combines Trump to hand over the Panama Canal to BlackRock. With that, there would be no need to seize the canal by force. The agreement gives the BlackRock consortium control of 43 ports in 23 countries, including the ports of Balboa and Cristobal, located at both ends of the Panama Canal. Other ports are located in Mexico, the Netherlands, Egypt, Australia, Pakistan, and elsewhere. That's not all. On Tuesday, the Trump administration identified 443 federal properties that will likely be put up for sale, including the headquarters of the FBI and the Department of Labor and Justice, as the president continues to shrink the federal government. A Heritage Foundation investigation has revealed that all documents bearing Joe Biden's signature during his presidency were initiated with an automatic pen, except one. The only document confirmed with Biden's actual signature was his letter announcing his withdrawal from the 2024 presidential race. Have you noticed that we still haven't seen the Epstein files or the JFK assassination files released? Attorney General Pam Bondi says Israeli national security information will be removed from the Epstein files to avoid revealing embarrassing names. Elon Musk says Pam Bondi and Kash Patel have been named as captains of ships with a hostile crew. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will meet with senior leaders of the processed food industrial complex to discuss potential issues ranging from banning seed oils and setting food additives to nutrition labels as the Make America Healthy Again revolution begins. Curious. According to Poet Dog, if your focus is on God, then your goal is true. If it is in everything else, then you are seeing the devil in the details, because the devil is in the details. Keshara's daily message. Allow all energies to surface for expression, to feel, observe, and release. If emotions are repressed, they accumulate and can lead to physical ailment. They can also cause sudden outbursts of further intensification of events, generating karmic energies. The sun is awakening. For much of the last year, solar activity was dominated by southern sunspots. Now the solar northern hemisphere is awakening. 2/3 of the current sunspot groups are located north of the solar equator, and their number is increasing again. Could this herald a second peak solar maximum? That's the question. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.